I think it's much more serious than people want to admit, especially conservatives, especially the political class, which is largely detached from the culture that is happening, the grassroots changes from the bottom up.
Karys, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Aaron. Great to be with you.
Absolutely. My first and most important question is, how are you doing? Like, actually, like for real, how are you doing?
Like in life, in general?
Just like, yeah. What's the temperature of your life right now?
I'm doing good, plugging away, very busy. It's kind of a new chapter in my life because I quit my job at Epoch Times back in August, and that was my life for 3 years. I was a producer there, and I even moved from New York to DC. I followed my producer, the other producer, and the executive producer here. So Epoch has been, a major part of what I've been doing for the last 3 years. So it's a new chapter since August. Now I got a book deal and I'm writing a book, and after the Fuentes Carlson interview, I also started consulting um Congress members and some journalists and things like that about what's going on with the right, since that's been something I've been following closely for a while. So it's been good, but it's been busy. And I would say the best thing about working on my own schedule is I get to go home when I want to California and be with my parents. So I've been trying to go out there as much as I can, and it's been really nice.
We're in California?
They're in the Bay Area, just north of San Francisco.
What's the city?
Larkspur, California. It's Marin County. It's where
Yeah.
I grew up, and they've never left.
Yeah, I was born in Foster City, close to
Oh,
San
you
Mateo.
were? Okay.
Yeah.
So East Bay. Wait, no,
Yeah.
that's East Bay, right? That's not South.
To be honest, I don't know. I just know it's Foster City. It's close to San Mateo, close to Burlingame.
Oh my
About
God,
45 minutes from San Francisco.
I'm so embarrassed that I don't know if it's South or East, because the truth is I don't even represent the Bay Area well, because I left right after high school and moved to New York City for 18 years. And so I really kind of just know about Marin County, where I grew up, but there's the whole East Bay scene and the South San Francisco scene, and Palo Alto and all that kind of stuff. And I just don't know the geography well. I'm embarrassed to admit that, but
I know less than you because we left and moved to Texas when I was 12. So, whatever.
Gotcha.
Anyways, so we're from around the same area, so that's cool. Hello, my friend. Before we jump straight into the episode, I would love to share the sponsors of this podcast. And the sponsors of this podcast are all the businesses that I've created that are really part of the ecosystem that run this whole thing. And at the top of that list is Patreon. Patreon is the home of our exclusive community where we do bonus episodes, live streams, Q&As, and merch discounts, and so much more. Patreon is the #1 way to support this podcast and to support my mental health nonprofit called You Are Loved. Next, we have my clothing brand called Shop for Everybody. Every hat and every t-shirt you see me wear on every single episode of this podcast is from Shop for Everybody. It's the home of For the Dads, For the Moms, all Something for Everybody merch, and it's the home of all You Are Loved merch. So that's shopforeverybody.com. And the last thing is my sports performance brand called Champions Adjust. Again, if you see anything Champions Adjust related, it's all found at champsadjust.com. It also has its own podcast. We also do a sports show through Champions Adjust. And if you're looking for any mindset or mental skills classes, they can all be found at champsadjust.com. And so if you want to stay up to date on everything that we're doing here with all of the businesses that I'm involved in, please go to aaronmashbitz.com and sign up for our weekly newsletter. Thank you. Now, on to the episode, completely uninterrupted and ad-free. Here we go. I can't imagine writing a book. So you mentioned that. It's I think that's the hardest thing in the world to do. What's your vibe about it?
Yeah,
Were you a writer before you got the book deal, or what's your status?
I mean, not a book writer. This is my first book. It's incredibly intimidating, very overwhelming. And I am really just trying to figure out the right angle, because this topic of what is happening to the right, the culture of the right is so big. And as I've been diving in and doing interviews and research, it's so much more sinister and so much bigger than Nick Fuentes and the Groypers or anti-Semitism and Israel or Tucker Carlson. And so it's hard to just kind of pare it down and figure out a direction and which path you want to take to complete the book. So yeah, it's very, very hard. But there's been one. I mean, I have a wonderful. My publishers are great. I mean, I haven't really talked to them that much, but there's other people that just have been incredibly supportive and helping me along the way. So it's been really great to be able to consult with so many people in the process.
Well, God bless you.
Thank you.
I write a weekly newsletter, and every time I sit down to write it, it's like fucking torture. And I'm like, God damn it, I got to get this
I
fucking thing
know.
out.
No, I'm not one of those writers that likes the process. I'm one of those writers that fell into op-eds and journalism kind of by accident, and I've never felt like it was an easy thing to do. It's something that you feel incredibly accomplished after you finish, a piece, an article, an essay, a press release. But while I'm doing it, I've never been super connected to the process. So in that sense, I feel like a little bit of a fraud when I say I'm a writer or like what's that word? Like a poser or
Mm,
something, right? Because, I know a lot of writers that it's like they need to write for their soul. And as they're writing, it's a release for them. I've never been one of those writers, even though I've, written hundreds of op-eds and essays and reports and things like that.
But you feel like what you're writing now is so important that you're willing to sort of go through the trenches for it. Is that the case?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have written it if I didn't have a publisher approach me and ask me to write it. I would probably still be at Epoch Times as we speak, but I gave it a lot of thought, and it just seemed like the right moment for it. And nobody's written a book on this, and I really feel like it should be me that writes it because I think it needs to come from the perspective of a MAGA conservative, written to MAGA conservatives and the political class. I don't feel it would be as impactful if I was like, well, definitely not a liberal, but even if I was just like a never Trumper or even just, I don't know, like a DeSantis person or something like that, right? Um, there are reasons for that, but I think that the book needs to come from somebody who really understands kind of America First MAGA principles so that they can elucidate how this new identitarian right has gone so off track and yet is functioning under the guise of like America First principles and yet isn't adhering to them at all. So, yeah, I feel like I'm the right person to do this, as hard as it may be.
Fucking right. Let's go. Can't wait for it. Book comes out, right? 2026?
Yeah, sometime in
Sometime.
2026. Yeah.
Okay. Well, before we get into all of that, we're going to talk about all of that extensively, but I'm very interested in your previous life because I also had a previous life in entertainment.
Mm,
So what were you doing, traveling the world as a musician, before you did all this? Was that what you were
mm.
doing?
Yeah, I wouldn't say traveling the world. I did travel internationally, but not much. Yeah, I after college, I went to NYU for undergrad, and after that, I really loved music, and I decided I'm just going to give this a shot for a few years and see if I can make this work. It's very hard. I think the most I ever made from doing music, was like after all my expenses, like net, right? Like after because I have to purchase my own drums and my equipment and everything. I think was probably like 10 grand. um, so it was a very, very hard life. I was hustling a lot. Um, but yeah, I was a drummer and I played in a lot of different bands. I had a few passion projects, and then I also wrote music. I love, love, love songwriting. So I tried to have my own band for about 5 years called Pep, which was this retro pop outfit reminiscent of um like 50s doo-wop bands. And that was so much fun, but I also never felt super comfortable as a front woman. I don't have the best voice. Like it's fine, but I'm not a super confident singer and I'm not super confident as a front woman. So that was tough for me, but it was fun. And yeah, and I toured a lot across the states mostly, but also in Canada, and in Europe a little bit. So yeah, it was fun, but you know, at some point you get sick of hustling and you grow up and you're like, I kind of want a more stable career.
Yeah, was that like that transition was the only thing that you thought about, or what really drove you into the work that you're doing now?
No, I was starting in high school. I realized I was a very proud Zionist, even though I wasn't really a practicing Jew so much outside of my parents going to synagogue on the holidays and celebrating Hanukkah and stuff like that. But that really piqued my interest in the scourge of radical Islam, Islamic terrorism, jihadism, things of that ilk. And so I was always interested in that stuff. And that's partially why I studied religion and journalism in school, because I was really interested in understanding fundamentalism and dogmatism and stuff like that. But after that, I was like, I'm going to put those interests on hold and I'm just going to do music a little bit. And then I think around like 2015, I was like, I want to go into the nonprofit space doing Israel advocacy or counter Islamism. So I had like one foot in each door. I was still doing music, but I interned for a Jewish National Fund. And then I got a job with CAMRA, the Committee for Accuracy in Middle East Reporting and Analysis. And I did that for like 3 years. And I worked for the Gatestone Institute for a little bit. And then I decided I wanted to go to grad school, and I picked up and I left everything behind in New York and I went to Israel and studied there. I studied government and homeland security for a year. It was a quick degree. That's kind of why I chose it, because it was cheap, first of all, because it was international, but also it was like a master's degree that you can get in 1 year, 3 semesters. So I did that, and then I came back and I still was kind of in the music scene, but it was like it was kind of peripherally, because
Mm.
I was just doing it for fun. It was not at all like I'm going to pursue this as a career. And then I basically got canceled from that scene. In 2020, the George Floyd thing happened, and the riots, the Black Lives Matter riots, and instead of posting black squares on my Instagram, I was posting videos of, black women that were absolutely devastated because their businesses had been torched and destroyed and their windows smashed in, right? And the people in my scene, in the music scene, kind of came for me. And there was one girl that went on a crusade against me. and and I actually didn't really know that it was happening, because it was like all online and all via social media. But I had people that I knew that were like texting me and being like, yeah, this girl is posting stories about you, being like, if you're friends with Karys, you're not friends with me, and all this kind of stuff. And so by that point, it didn't really matter, because I really had one foot out the door anyway. So that was
Mhm.
kind of like the icing on the cake. That was like, yeah, okay, I'm out of the scene. I'm out of just the political arrogance of these people thinking that they know anything about this stuff when they have committed to a life of artistry, which is just very different. So that was that. I still do music for fun. I work with a record label called Baste Records. And they actually did put out something that I wrote a long time ago, and they put it out very recently, like last month. And I think today, I can't believe this wasn't the first thing I said, but I think today the music video for that song that they released is dropping. So, but because it's such a tangential thing for me, it's like it's not something that occupies my mind a lot. But yeah, so I still have some songs that I wrote a few years ago that are now, all this time later, they're going to be released by this record label that's a proud conservative record label run by a proud Zionist Jew out of Montreal. So I do still do music on the side, but it's just a hobby.
Mhm. Great. Well,
What
thanks
were
for sharing
you?
that.
What were you doing in entertainment?
I was a professional wrestler, like WWE.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
that's wow, interesting. So that you consider that the entertainment industry?
For sure. For sure. Yeah, dude, that's all predetermined pretend fighting theatrical theater. So it's
Okay.
certainly entertainment, and the sort of hustle grind culture, sort of starving artist type of vibe is very similar. I
Really?
mean, for my first year of shows, I was making $0 to $10, traveling between states and trying to get on shows and, putting together matches. And, then, like anything, sort of, you catch a break here and there. Maybe you get a bigger show. Someone recognizes you. You get like sort of someone puts you over and they say, oh, this guy's pretty good. Maybe you should give him a look. And social media back in then, like 2016, 2017, 2018 was obviously still very important, much more important now for sort of up and coming wrestlers. But yeah, I went over to Europe a bunch and, did a bunch of stuff. I actually moved out to the East Coast to pursue that career, and then had some very personal things happen, and then my life changed, and now I just talk behind a microphone for a living. So,
Yeah. Are there a lot of Jews in that world of
no,
performance wrestling?
no. When I was training, initially, because you want to have like a character when you're a professional wrestler, right? You think like Undertaker, he's like the dead man. Things are different now
Right.
because everything's so out in the open, and everyone sort of knows the deal. So the characters are less sort of theatrical and more like this is a real human being, but he has like this
Mm.
stuff to him and extra layers and narratives and all these types of things. But back in the day, I was like super into characters, and so since everyone knew I was Jewish, they wanted me to be like an accountant. That was going to be my character. Yeah.
Oh dear. Oh
And
my goodness.
in wrestling, everything is about stereotypes. And that's not
Uh,
sort of a bad thing because people can
okay.
relate to stereotypes. And so when you walk through the curtain, before you say anything, people should sort of know your vibe and your character. And they
Right.
can only really do that through certain stereotypes.
But I thought you
And
were
so
gonna say something like, they wanted me to be like a Maccabean warrior or something like that. And you're like,
it's
accountant.
like straight up accountant, fucking Hebrew Hammer and consultant or some shit like that.
Abraham or consultant, yeah.
And at the end of the match, I would basically have like one of those printout receipts, and I would shove the receipt in their mouth or something like that. That was the fucking idea. Um,
That is hilarious.
I did not do that. Never did that. Said no to that completely. Came up with my own character.
Wait, that was an
Uh,
actual idea?
that was an actual idea.
Like the
Certain
receipts?
the receipt, everything that they said was an actual idea. I did not go through with any of it because I thought that was fucking retarded.
Uh-huh.
So my name was Jackson Stone, and I came up with a moniker Lights Camera Jackson. So I was like a pretend movie star. So I did that as my character for a while,
Okay.
even though I had $0. So that was very interesting to sort of
Yeah.
manage to figure that out. But yeah, that was
Yeah.
my career for a while. It was amazing. I loved it. Kind of still have one foot in the door like you. I do a reaction YouTube channel to WWE to watch it, and I got some buddies who were in the big time and stuff like that. And so
Mhm.
I'm still obsessed with it. I wanted to be a wrestler since I was 12 years old. It's like fucking
Really?
coolest thing ever. To run around in my underwear and do fake matches and all these types of things was great. But yeah, vibe's different now. I can't be doing that as a husband and a father. So I'm
Mhm.
glad I'm not doing
Mhm.
that anymore. But it was
Mhm.
amazing. I love every moment of it. And if you're interested, anyone watching or listening, and you're new to my show, there's a bunch of stuff on the internet that you can see with me in my underwear if that piques your interest. If not, don't look
That
for
piques my interest a little bit. I'm gonna go check it out.
it. Yeah, so that was the life before the life, and so now we're doing this. Okay, so
Mhm.
to jump into the more serious information now,
Mhm.
let's talk like what does actually a MAGA conservative mean to you? Like what are those principles? What are those values? And then we can
Mhm.
maybe speak about how it's being sort of co-opted and coerced to mean something differently.
Mhm. Well, the way Trump is a very transactional person, and sometimes it's very hard to pin him down and actually determine what is MAGA about, right? Are there any principles behind it? But as somebody who was very invested in Trump, not necessarily the first time around, but certainly by his second and third term, there are certain things that I knew that were fundamental to his vision that mattered very much to me. Things like a return to constitutional priorities and the First Amendment, right? I was very much in the fight against social media censorship, especially during the pandemic, right? Suppressing stories like the Hunter Biden laptop and following scandals like Russiagate and seeing how people raising the alarm bells on that were suppressed and silenced. So a return to the First Amendment, including religious freedom, was very important to me. And then also things like building up our industrial base, having a very robust middle class, and manufacturing apparatus in America, right? I mean, it's no secret that we have offshored so much of our goods and services to China. China produces like 80% of our generic medicines. I mean, it's really, really bad when we really look at the details and understand how beholden we are to an enemy nation that has a very outspoken goal of destroying America. And so, um, you know, reviving our manufacturing and bringing back that, having an industrial policy to bring back that manufacturing was very important to me. Through trade and tariffs, things like that, and having a peace through strength foreign policy, right? Being much more vigilant about how we send our where we send our troops, how we use our tax dollars in terms of defense, trying to de-bloat the military and industrial complex while still wielding a big stick and uh making our enemies know that they cannot fuck with us, right? Like they better not even try, because if they lay a finger on us, we will go all out, right? So finding that balance of kind of getting into less foreign entanglements based on some sort of naive neoconservative notions, excuse me, of being able to spread democracy from the top down, things like that. But also having our enemies fear us so that we can establish a healthy deterrence and not be afraid to actually carry through on our threats to other nations. So walking that line is very important to me. So those are just some of the, I mean, immigration is probably like the last like major one, right? Like overhauling the entire immigration system, not just closing the border, but having mass deportations to try to get out the 11 million, maybe even more, illegals that are here. Understanding how that has decimated our economy, how that has hurt minorities. Understanding how that has created. How that has demoralized our culture, things like that. That when I think of MAGA principles, those are some of the main things. There are others, but those are some of the main things that I think of.
And as of right now, how do you think this Trump presidency is going?
Net positive. I don't agree with everything. I think Trump has his blind spots. I think some of his admin officials have their blind spots as well. But I've always thought that about Trump. I always was uncomfortable, for example, with Trump's relationship with Turkey, and now so with Qatar. But I think there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that, like in Washington, I hear about that we don't even hear about on the news that they're doing. I think that they are up against an unbelievable task. I mean, they are trying to gut a bureaucracy in 4 years. I mean, this should take 3 terms to do. So everybody is working so, so, so hard around the clock. I mean, Trump's like 80 years old, and I think I've heard he works like 12 hours a day. So I think people are working very hard, but I think it's very hard to get done a lot of the things that Trump wants to get done. I mean, he can put out as many executive orders as he wants, but if he doesn't get Congress to pass these bills, then you know uh, a lot of things are just going to disappear once he's out of office. So I think he's doing the best he can, and I don't think that everything is going to get done that we hoped it would get done, but I think that we would be naive to expect it to, honestly.
Mm. Yeah. Do you think he's fulfilling the promises he made to the American people when he was running again?
Generally, yes, but we'd have to go through each of those promises and
Yeah.
evaluate each one on its own merits.
Yeah.
But generally,
Yeah.
yes, or as if not as much as the American people would like, he's certainly trying
Yeah.
for sure.
100%. And who do you see running in what, 3, 4 years' time as the Republican candidate?
I mean, right now, I think the only people who have been floated seriously are Vance and Rubio and maybe DeSantis.
Mm.
I mean, you always have people being like, Fuentes should run for president, Tucker Carlson, but like, it's not going to happen. Well, I don't know. I shouldn't say it won't happen. Anything's possible in this world. But yeah, I mean, those are the only people I've seen floated now. But I'm really bad with speculating about the future. I never make accurate predictions, so who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah. If Tucker Carlson and Fuentes run for president, then I don't know what the fuck we're doing. So
I don't think Carlson would ever run for president. I wouldn't put it past Nick Fuentes. I mean, he's talked about his political ambitions, and he
really,
just formed like a PAC. I think.
oh
I
gosh.
think he just formed like a 501c4.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get into those guys here in a second. Okay, so then you have this sort of new version on the right growing. Some people call it the woke right. So
hmm
where did this come from? What should we know about it? And how serious is it?
hmm I think it's much more serious than people want to admit, especially conservatives, especially the political class, which is largely detached from the culture that is happening, the grassroots changes from the bottom up. Um, in terms of where it came from, I mean, it depends how far back you want to go, right? Because there was always there was always a far right contingent, right? There was always neo-Nazis, right, or Christian fundamentalists. Was always these extreme versions of the Republican Party, but I don't really trace the woke right uh that far back. I trace If you really want to get into the origins of it, I would start in 2015 with the alt right, with like the Richard Spencers, right, and Fuentes and Milo. There was this kind of scene that people called the alt right, and there were some people now that were part of that scene that are no longer, like Laura Loomer and some others. I think Bannon. Um, so I would really trace it back to the alt-right, but they seemed like sort of a formidable threat in 2015 when they were campaigning for Trump, and they were loud and they were out there on the street in the field with megaphones. But then they largely went underground, because when Trump won, it became very clear that he wanted nothing to do with these people. They also got decimated on social media, right? They all got silent, censored. Uh, their accounts got canceled. I mean, they really got canceled. These people. Some and even I would argue in horrible ways. Like, I don't necessarily believe in some of the ways these people were treated, even though these people are just the worst of the worst in terms of humanity to me. Like, some of their bank accounts got like PayPal wouldn't use them, all this kind of stuff, weird stuff like that, which I do not support. But that being said, the point I'm making is these people kind of didn't really have a place in polite society for a while after their initial emergence into the scene. And I think a number of factors have all come together to make our culture rife for these people to reemerge. I think number one, the pandemic had a huge effect on the political axes and on the conservative mindset. I think we became much more populist, even much more than we were the first time around when Trump won, because we saw how much our institutions have failed us. I think we became much more conspiratorial because we saw certain things happen that ended up being true, that we were labeled conspiracy theorists for pointing out. Even things like COVID came from a lab in Wuhan, right? Like, when people were saying that at the beginning, we were all dismissed and chastised as far right conspiracy theorists. And then years later, you have the FBI under Christopher Wray admitting, like, yeah, it came from the lab. Like, that's the strongest evidence we have for where it came from was a lab in Wuhan. Now nobody even really questions it, right? So things like that. So I think we became much more conspiratorial, much more populist. I also think that there were other things happening. There were certain philosophies that were circulating among right-wing factions that took time to really attach and gain hold. But now you see influencers or public officials kind of regurgitating some of the talking points of these philosophers. And some of these philosophers are new. They recently emerged on the scene. People like Stephen Wolfe and Curtis Yarvin. Some of them are old, and people are just resurrecting their talking points. People like Carl Schmitt or David Irving or Mearsheimer, somebody like Mearsheimer, which has been around for decades. So I think there was a reemergence of a lot of these philosophers, which, another big one would be Alexander Dugin, right? Who has famously been, a very formidable influence on many of the influencers that we hear on the right today. So I think there was a lot of philosophies circulating, and for various other reasons became, like popular again. Um, and I think so I think that was one factor, is just these philosophers gaining ground and influence that, in my opinion, are very sinister and do not represent MAGA or America First. Um, and then I think there's other factors too that came into play. I mean, one thing that people talk about a lot is just how demoralized young men were over the last decade because of the woke left, right? And just how beat down they were, told they were toxic just because they were white and male. And now they're growing up in a world where they can't afford a house. They're really economically shortchanged, and they're angry. And who wouldn't be, right? And when you have an angry society, especially of men, it's no surprise that there would be some sort of identitarian backlash, especially when they've been called racist and fascist and white supremacist and toxic, and they've just had these labels thrown about them without merit. Then you have a generation that is essentially going to embrace those labels and be like, fine, if you are calling me racist, I'm going to be racist. I'm going to be as racist as possible. There's even more factors we could get into. There's the freeing of X, if you will, by Elon Musk, which had which had an influence on the direction of the culture, right? You had people who had sort of been on the fringes, like Alex Jones and Nick Fuentes, come back and have a platform that was very, very mainstream in conservative circles. So now you had their ideas slipping into the mainstream, and then you had people like Tucker Carlson, big names, or Patrick Bet-David or Steven Crowder, or whoever, that are now going to launder these ideas even further into the mainstream. So I think the opening up of X was also a big factor in how we've arrived at this moment. And there's probably other ones, but there's a whole bunch for you.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on there.
Yeah,
I mean, I'll touch on the one that's like means most to me is the young man.
the
I talk about,
demoralization. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I heard this the other day. Basically, is that men are being treated like hairy, misbehaving women. And I'm like, that's kind of true. And if you
Hmm.
tell a man that he's just a hairy, misbehaving woman and that the essence of him is toxic and he's just be more like a woman, I don't think you're gonna bring the best out of that person. I coach a lot of sports still, and I would be the worst coach in the world if that's what I was telling my
Of
young
course.
athletes.
Of
Hey,
course.
just be like the fucking softball players over there. You guys are misbehaving. No, like I want to bring out the best in someone.
Hmm.
I'm going to go to their essence and say how much value and meaning they have just as a human being, and then we work from there. And so I mean, you could see it playing out in the culture in real time now that men are dying 4 times the rate of suicide by women. Like
Oh, wow. I didn't
80% of
even know that.
suicides. Yeah, 80% of suicides are men.
In the US?
It's yeah, yeah, 4 times more likely to die by suicide than women.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and
I
men
mean, I
are
think
not even like producing as much sperm and all that kind of stuff now, right?
yeah, testosterone is down.
Yeah.
Young men aged 18 to 24, 50% of them have never asked a woman out in person. Like that stuff right there is
Right.
crazy. I mean, and
Yeah.
most people will think like, oh, men aren't having sex. Good. Who cares? They don't need it. Fuck them.
Oh my
All they do
God.
is,
No, it's
it's like that's the
horrific.
opposite of thing that should possibly happen. Like
No, I
when
know.
men, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to jump in and say that, in addition to just social media, just the fact that you have young adolescents that are always looking at screens, it makes it so that they actually don't have to go outside and get vitamin C, and they don't have to run around and develop their joints and their muscles, and they have porn, so they don't have to go and be sexually active. They don't have to put themselves out there and risk asking a woman on a date, right? I mean, everything their reward system is so immediate. They can get everything inside at home that their impulses are demanding. And then as a result, what do you have? You have these people, yeah, they think they're getting their sexual needs met. They think they're getting their emotional needs met because they're always on Snapchat and they're always texting with their friends and TikTok, but they're not. They're getting the dopamine, but they're not getting the oxytocin. And so they're all depressed and anxious. And then they're all overly medicated. They're all on ADHD medication and antidepressants and antipsychotics, and then those have knockdown effects, and that's not healthy for a generation. I mean, it's really awful. I feel like we are the last. I mean, I don't know how you are. I feel. I mean, I'm 38, so I'm a millennial, but I feel like we millennials are like the last generation that we knew what it was like to exist without the internet. And so we
Mhm.
are the last generation that actually had a chance at, like, the system wasn't working against us and we could grow up
Mhm.
to be healthy, productive people. Now I feel like nothing is fostering that type of healthy environment for young kids. Everything is working against them. So it's no surprise that they're all overly medicated and they're all angry and depressed and they're all trying to channel these instincts that they don't know, these unhealthy instincts. They don't know where they come from, and it's no surprise that they look out to these influencers, these chaos agents, and just these these rage baiters are who are just weaponizing this anger among young people, and they are exploiting it. And instead of doing what Charlie Kirk did and teaching them to channel that healthy, in a healthy way, and into, focusing on a family and a career and your faith, these influencers are essentially telling them to give in to these their instincts of rage and anger, and to victimize themselves and to look to another group of people to blame, whether that's Jews or Indians or women, depending on what faction of the right we're talking about. That is so unhealthy, to look for a scapegoat for your own situation that you're in, and not
Mhm.
to cultivate a sense of personal responsibility. And that's what these negative influencers are doing. They're not teaching them how to be personally responsible and take control of their own life and channel their feelings into healthy, productive ideas and activities. They're doing the opposite.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, and when you spend most of your time on the internet, you're going to stumble on some horrible ideas. It's just part of it, right? That the algorithm is not going to feed you Dr. Jordan Peterson, who's telling
Right.
you that you should take responsibility for your actions and having a family is beautiful and amazing and it's the best thing you could possibly do. He's going to feed you, because if you're watching porn all day, it's going to feed you some of those interesting things that relate to that, which are going to be Andrew Tate, which is telling you
Mm,
that women are property,
mhm,
and fuck them.
mhm.
Or you're going to get the Nick Fuentes message of like, he's literally said dating is gay. So you
Yeah.
get those two ideas where there's absurd ideas but don't make any sense for the regular man who's living in the world. And then you're not going to stumble upon people who are actually going to give you this quality information, like, again, like a Dr. Jordan Peterson. And my advice mostly to young men is like, the first thing that you need to do, if you feel this sense of like, I can do more, which you are capable of more, and you have this instinct in you, get to the fucking gym. And once
Mhm,
you get to the gym, things can actually change, because then you're
mhm,
going to meet people, you talk to people, you grow and develop discipline and effort, and you see like, oh, I can change my life and like all this type of stuff. And I think for young men, like like natural instincts are okay to inhabit. Like for me specifically, I'll say like the only reason I wanted to get my shit together when I was a young man is so hopefully one day I could have sex with a girl.
mhm.
You know what I mean? And that's
Yeah.
not a bad motivator.
Mm-mm.
And eventually that motivation changes. It
Yeah.
changes because you change, and
Mhm.
you're like, oh, okay, like I get to know myself better. I can communicate better. If I do get rejected, it's not the worst thing in the world.
Right.
And so it's okay to have those like those little bits of motivation for young men. But we say like, oh, we shouldn't be talking about that. No, we absolutely should say that it's okay for young men to go talk to girls and try to have sex with them. Of course, in a good normal way, and like also understanding, if a girl, you go up to a girl and she says, hey, I'm not interested, like, oh, okay, cool, no problem. Then you learn that skill, and like
Mhm.
those things are really important for the fabric of society, for
Of
for
course.
dating, for procreation, for all these types
Right.
of things.
For building
And
up
for
confidence and,
yeah.
like, self-actualization, you have to put yourself out there. You have to experience the real world. You have to be rejected. You have to experience failure, you know? This is Instead,
Right.
these young men are being coddled by Nick
Hmm.
Fuentes and Tucker Carlson in the same and Andrew Tate, in the same way that that young kids are being coddled by the left. And just there's an overemphasis on their feelings and how, how they what they feel, and, not sort of an emphasis on on public service or just a world that is bigger than them, you know? So,
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I think the gym is huge, especially now that people are indoors all the time. But I do think that there's that whole manosphere influence culture. They emphasize the gym a lot,
Hmm.
and they are problematic because they have coupled that with other ideas that are related to, you know, being an alpha male and things like that, right? So it's like there is this whole kind of image around going to the gym that I think is really unhealthy. But I think, you know, exercise in general obviously is
Mm.
crucial to, you know, for kids to get started early. I mean, we were never even told that exercise was important until, you know, like 18 years old. But now, because kids are not even working their bones and riding their bikes and, you know, playing football, they need to start early. Like they're just not getting they're not getting the physical stimulation that they need.
Yeah. Yeah. I relate these alpha male type characters to like a you ever meet like a UFC fighter, right? And does that UFC fighter ever tell you that he's like a really good fighter? He's like a badass? No. No UFC fighter ever tells you they're good at fighting.
Mm,
Just like no alpha male actually tells you that they're an alpha male. Like that shit
mm,
just doesn't like
right.
if we had a group if I
That's a
had a
good
group of
point.
dude friends and the dude came and he's like a new guy into the group and he'd be like a bunch of dudes and he's like, yo, dude, I'm the fucking coolest dude
I'm the
ever. I'm
alpha
so
male.
sweet. Like we're like, dude, what are you doing?
If
Just
he
like
said
leave
that,
the
then you know he's actually not.
yeah, I'm like, dude, leave the group. Like, what are you doing? We're just
Yeah.
hanging out. Like, we'll see you in action if you're like the dude you say you are. No one has to say that thing. And so
Hmm.
whenever I see someone on social media saying that they're like a badass motherfucker, I'm like, dude, you're not. I know a
Hmm.
guy at my jujitsu gym who's 5'6", 170 pounds, and he's a black belt who will literally tie you up in a knot. And he's the calmest, coolest motherfucking dude I've ever met in my life. And you would never know. And like that's the vibe. Like you have
Hmm.
this, that's the vibe that men need to have. It's like you have this cool, calm, collected violence. Like when I'm with confidence, not violence, and I'm with my wife and my son, and we're out, like, you know, unless something really, really catastrophic happens, I have this confidence in myself that I know I can take care of them if something happens. But I'm not telling everyone that. It's not written on my forehead that like I go to jujitsu. Like that's retarded, you know. But like that's what social media has bred. People who just speak just nonsense
Hmm.
because it gets good clicks and it probably gets them money and people probably buy their course. And so I understand why you do it, but it just not. It feels weird in my bones for that. Like I don't know.
Hmm. Well, it's all
Anyways, on my
based around
soapbox there.
ego and insecurity and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
It's not based on real mental and social development.
yeah, yeah. That's true. All right, back to MAGA. We sidetracked there for a little bit, but that was good.
No, I think all of that kind of peripherally plays into the moment that we're in. I do.
Yeah,
Because we see that this stuff, these really sinister ideas, this authoritarianism now that the right is pushing is disproportionately affecting young men.
yeah,
So it
certainly.
relates.
All right, so what do we do about it? You said you're consulting some Congress people about
Mhm.
what's happening. What
Yeah.
sort of ideas,
Right.
things, principles do we need to do?
Well, I think it's really important, first of all, to understand the scope of the problem, to understand how we got here, to understand all the factors that came into play. I think that the political class needs to get that this is not just an anti Semitism and Nick Fuentes problem, that there are gateway philosophies, gateway movements that have been brewing that have kind of led to the most extreme version of it. I think that people need to understand that even if you dealt with the anti-Semitism, that anti-Semitism is basically just like the wedge issue that is bringing all of these different groups together. But like fundamentally, there's so much more than that. There's this very, you know, misogynistic element to it. There's this racialism for some of these factions. There's, you know, the anti-Western, the anti-America component. There's the teaming up with our enemies, denying that they are our enemies at all. Literally, some of these people are promoting China. They're obviously all pro Russia, but even the CCP, like they are actively like, yeah, no, the CCP is great. They're not our enemy. I mean, so you know, you cannot be MAGA. Let me just say this: you cannot be America first, and you cannot be MAGA if you don't see the Chinese Communist Party as an existential threat to America. And that might be because you're naive and you're ignorant, you haven't been paying attention, and you don't understand what the CCP has been doing from the top down and the ground up in our local communities to disintegrate the fabric of our nation. Everything from their, everything from their buying up the land and the weed farms, and to their ambitions in space and on the moon. I mean, every single level, they are there, and they have the singular expansionist goal of destroying the West, so that the CCP, so that Chinese communism can be the ruling, the reigning, um the imperialist, like supreme replacement for America. And so if you don't recognize that, like that's like, to me, like a very clear line, because Trump has always, always, always understood that. He has always understood that we need to get the CCP out of our communities, out of our cities, out of our states, in order to make America secure, safe, and sovereign again, because they have just been playing this long game and destroying us from within for decades. And and every other president, Republican or Democrat, has essentially allowed it to take place, and in many instances even fostered it. So yeah, I mean, I think I'm just trying to get people to see the different elements of this. Like I said, the different philosophies that are circulating, the danger of philosophies like Stephen Wolfe and Curtis Yarvin, that a lot of these people that we respect are actually pushing, trying to get them to understand the influence somebody like Alexander Dugin is having on people. Um, and then I think once you really see this for what it is, and you see how enormous this issue is, I think that you need to start tackling it on all fronts. Just like we've tackled the left, I think we need to do the same thing within our own camp, right? You need to get it at the organizational, the nonprofit level. You need to come at it from a legal perspective and lawfare. You need to have policy from the top down. So I really think that, like, and it won't be as big of an endeavor as it will be if we ignore this 10 years down the road. Like, if we start now, then we can actually contain this thing, keep it on the fringes, and have a good mainstream, somewhat populist, constitutional, fully functioning Republican Party. But if we don't, then we are literally headed to this, like, into this, like, post-liberal, post-constitutional reality, where the Republican Party is literally pushing, like, feudalism, monarchism, authoritarianism, racialism, right? They are essentially pushing, like, big government, like, not small government, that we are supposed to be, that conservatism is supposed to be based on. So I think depending on who you are is the front that you need to get in to battle it. If you're a congressman, that's going to look very different than if you're an attorney, right? Or if you're a podcaster, right? If you're Glenn Beck, then what does he need to do to confront this? He needs to start having conversations about this on his show with people who really understand this, with people like Trevor Loudon, or even just people like Yoram Ettinger, who can talk about the issue of, like, foreign aid to Israel and what that actually means. What are the practical elements of this, right? Like, it needs to be a conversation, and I don't mean just I don't mean that means that every episode you have to be talking about, like, you have to be, like, shitting on the right, right? But what I mean is, you take their ideas that they are promoting. Once you understand the specific ideas that they are promoting, the anti-Semitic ideas and the Christian fundamentalist ideas, right? Then you can have guests on to actually talk about these ideas, and alert the American public to possible distortions, or misinterpretations of really beautiful things like Christian nationalism, right? Or I don't even know. Like, there's certain ideas that have been so co-opted, and so just so weaponized, right, for their own purposes of gaining power and everything, that when you say the word Christian nationalism now, it doesn't mean what a lot of us believed it to mean 5 years ago, which is just that we are a Christian nation and we should be tolerant, but that doesn't mean that we should be neutral. This is something that Yoram Hazony says. We can proudly display our faith. We do not need to be taking prayer out of schools, right? Or putting people in jail who are, anti-abortion, like praying in front of an abortion clinic. I'm not talking about, like heckling people. But now Christian nationalism means something very different to a subfaction of these folks, a subfaction of the woke right. It literally means like a social, uh, conservative centralization of government and government policing religion, to the point where these people even want them to be like closing down churches that do not operate in the same vein of Christianity that they want them to, let alone like synagogues and mosques, right? So
Mm.
that is not what, people like Jay Richards was thinking about when he was talking about Christian nationalism. This is something very different than that. So, people need to understand that, and there needs to be conversations like that happening. And these are really good conversations to have. They're not conversations that need to center around complaining about Republicans. They're just conversations about, what does it mean to be a conservative? Like, what do we actually believe in? What are the different elements? And when does it go too far where it's not conservatism anymore? Right. So I think those are conversations that a lot of podcasters and show hosts and anchors should be having. And then if you're in government, you need to be, just actually more cognizant of what you're promoting and who your constituents are. Um, I'm sure there's all sorts of things they can do in their own states, their own districts to address this stuff. I'm not sure what. I'm not exactly in, I mean, I live in the swamp, but I'm not in the political scene much. So, I think it just depends. And if you're attorneys, you can try to address some of the funding streams of this, right? Because there's some major funders of all of this, people who probably don't even know what they're funding, like Peter Thiel. Like, he probably doesn't even understand like the extremism that he is funding, at the local level, and in the culture. But then there's other people like Charles Haywood, which is a big backer of this. And then there's foreign influences, right? And that's something that attorneys can really look into, is whether it's legal for, some of these nonprofits and these groups to be, maybe taking money from outside, from like the CCP. There's all these rumors that like a lot of this Christian nationalist stuff is tied up with CCP stuff. Who knows? But this is stuff to investigate, and you can possibly find illegal, like criminal activity going on there, or even blackmail or things like that. So it just depends who you are, but it needs to be fought on all fronts.
Mm. Yeah. Off that, like it is also very important for prominent podcasters to be calling out the stuff instead of always calling for like unity. We need to have
Mm,
unity on the right, unity on the right. It's always again, we're always fighting against the left, we're always fighting against the left. Well, not really. Like you should be able to call people out, or critique them. And if you do, also in the same vein, have people on your show who have very disgusting ideas, you shouldn't just give them softball questions. You should be grilling them on certain ideas and why they believe these things and where these ideas come from and what they mean and how they're impacting people's lives and what they think about this stuff. It's like, that's the whole point of a conversation. It's not just like pay patty cake with these ideas and then fucking
mhm,
give each other a slap on the butt and say good game. Like,
mhm.
you got to get in there a little bit, and that's the whole point, because that's the only way you're going to get to a sort of robust sense of the ideas that you think are most important, that can actually lead you into a future that's prominent and good and has a flourishing society, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
totally. And I think that's a really good point, and it brings up this whole idea of, um, gatekeeping, and the fact that we have always been gatekeepers as conservatives. That doesn't mean that we engage in cancel culture. It does, just because we gatekeep. Those are very different things. Like, yes, it's true that MAGA was a big tent, and we let in a lot of like disaffected liberals, right? And people who don't even necessarily consider themselves conservative to this day, but they are willing to play by the rules. They are willing they have submitted themselves to what MAGA represents, to the point where, yeah, there might be like an issue or something like that that they are on the other side of the fence on, but the bigger, worldview and the bigger values, they are on board. Okay. But as conservatives, we don't allow like flaming leftists into our movement. Like, what is that then? Like, conservatives we conserve certain things and we have principles, unlike the left, which brought in all of their crazies and never said no to any of them. And then the progressive neo-Marxist revolutionaries ended up completely overwhelming any sort of moderate liberalism that there was in the Democratic Party. And now there's no middle. You have, you have a Democrat Party that has now embrace these insane extremist ideas about, trans rights or whatever it is, and DEI and all that kind of stuff, right? And it's like, why would we be so naive to think that that can't happen to us? We need to say no. We need to assert our principles. We need to assert our red lines. If you do not, yes, we can have debates about specific issues, but if you do not share our larger values and our larger worldview about America, then go do whatever you want wherever you want, but not here, not under the banner of MAGA conservatism, or even under the banner of America First, because a lot of these people now are trying to differentiate and they're like, we're actually America First and MAGA is dead, right? But no, you're something else. You're something else, and it is whatever it is. It's in lockstep on a lot of issues with the left, and that's why you see all of these leftists now teaming up with all of these America Firsters like Tucker Carlson and Candace, and even Steve Bannon, who is hosting like drop site news people on his show, and like people from the Iranian lobby. It's like, people need to be aware that a lot of these influencers that we once thought of as proud conservatives, who might have been back in the day, are not working in our interest anymore. And that does not mean that we are calling for them to be canceled. We are not saying that Tucker Carlson should lose his livelihood, should lose his job. That's what cancellation is. It's you are calling for these people to be like stripped of their livelihood because of their political or ideological opinions. When we criticize Tucker and when we say he's not welcome here in the movement, that is not cancellation. That's just saying like he doesn't stand for what we stand for. And so his voice is better suited for another venue. That's gatekeeping. And I don't think there's anything wrong with gatekeeping. All movements do it. All ideologies do it. Like, it's just the nature of it. I mean, it's the nature of different political movements and political ideologies. That's how it works.
You want to know? This just popped into my brain, so I'm gonna share it with you in real time. So here we go. This is what I think of Tucker Carlson. I had a roommate back in the day. I owned a condo, and I had a roommate. So in this condo, we had two bathrooms, right? One
Okay.
in my room, and one bathroom that he used. Right? We each
Okay.
used our own separate bathroom.
Uh-huh.
And I come home one day, and he's not home yet or whatever, and I look at his bathroom because I had some guests coming over or whatever the case may be. It's just making sure it's clean or tidy or whatever, because that was like the public bathroom.
Right.
And there's just like shit everywhere. Like it's shit on the seat. Like it was just
Oh
like
my God.
a gnarly poo. Like it's just like there's like poo stains. And just like it looked
Oh my
gross, right?
God.
And so I waited. I didn't clean it. I waited for him to come home, and I was like, "Hey man, can you clean your bathroom like before we have people over?" And he's like, "Oh, that wasn't me." Oh, well, that wasn't me. I was like, who the fuck was it, dude? Where there's only two of us that live here and I don't use that bathroom. He's like, oh, it wasn't me. It
What
wasn't me.
did he have people over maybe?
No, he didn't have
Okay.
anyone over. He just kept claiming it wasn't me. So I was like, whatever, dude, I'll clean it. That's exactly what I think of Tucker Carlson.
Yeah, the gaslighting. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. And yet he's shitting everywhere. It's so true.
Yeah.
I didn't know where you were going with that, but that is like, it's such a good analogy.
Yeah, I just came up with that right now because I watched him, talk about he doesn't know what the word ally means with Piers Morgan. I don't know what that word means. I don't know what that word means. Okay, well,
only
yeah,
with respect to Israel, but with everyone else, you know what it means.
And then, but our alliance though with Qatar is really strong. Oh, so you do know what that word means? You fucking snake.
They're one of our closest allies. I know. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Tommy Robinson, who is that guy? Josh Hammer. I've never heard of him. Like, what are you talking about? You've had these people on your shows multiple times. No, the worst guy. Like, he should be in the dictionary under gaslighting. Like, his picture should be there. He is the ultimate gaslighter. Yep. He makes you believe he makes you feel crazy for believing things when they are actually true about him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I can put myself back in that moment with my roommate. I'm sure this is how a lot of people feel when they watch Tucker Carlson. Like, was that me? Did I actually use his bathroom? Like, do I need to clean it? Like,
Right.
he really seems really confident that it wasn't him, and that's messed up to
Mm.
know actively that you were lying in real time to people, millions of people. And now the poop situation is not like a pernicious idea, right? It's not ruining anyone's life. But Tucker Carlson's ideas can be extremely dangerous to the fabric of America and our flourishing society. And that becomes extremely dangerous. And so again, like you said,
Because they are authoritarian. They are
mm,
tyrannical. That is why they're dangerous. They're not dangerous because they're subversive or because they're anti-establishment or because they're outside of the mainstream. No, they're dangerous because they believe they are a totalitarian, totalizing ideology of the American system. And like we talked about before, they play into the worst instincts of human beings, and they weaponize like real things that we're dealing with in order to sow chaos and division and usher in like a version of government that is, like I said, it's post-constitutional. It is not what the founders wanted. It is totalitarian in nature.
yeah. Hmm. Anyways, um, now speaking more a little bit about Israel and anti-Semitism, why do you think everyone seems to be so obsessed with this country of Israel? Is it
Mhm.
because it's like the new form, the new mutation of anti-Semitism, or is it something different than that?
Well, I mean, the anti-Zionism has been a staple of the left for decades now, since after 9/11, right? We all know that the left is cooked when it comes to Israel and that it is institutionally anti-Semitic. But I think one of the reasons why it has percolated and become a such a popular motif now on the right is largely because of what I said about us becoming conspiratorial during the pandemic. Like we're much more likely to seek out conspiracies to explain things that we want explained now. The pandemic kind of opened that can of worms. And I've said this on many people's shows. I've said that for a lot of us, something broke in our brains during the pandemic, and we became inclined to see conspiracies everywhere. And if you see the world through that view, like, and people will say this proudly, like Alex Stein says, I'm a proud conspiracy theorist. Well, eventually you will get to the Holocaust if you see, because anti-Semitism has always functioned as a conspiracy. I think people don't understand that. They think it's just like an ordinary kind of hatred that punches down, like other forms of hatred, like racism or misogyny, where you see a black person or a woman or a gay person as inferior to you, right? But anti-Semitism has always had this conspiratorial component where you look at the Jews and you see a secret cabal wielding power and influence behind the scenes for a sinister Jewish agenda of, taking over whatever. So I think that we just became more primed to listen to that stuff now. I think that's one reason that kind of stuff is making a comeback in right-wing circles like it did in World War II. And I also think that populism, there's always like an anti-Semitic strain of populism, because populism, when you think of populism, kind of like a mob mentality can come to mind. And I'm not anti-populist at all. Trump is a populist and I support him. But I think that we should always be aware that that component will rear its head at some point. And if you are responsible and you understand that, then you crush it and you say there's no place for it. But, populism is for the people, by the people, and so it brings to it brings to mind kind of visions of people, like Charlottesville or something, people with like torches, like running down the street and saying Jews will not replace us. Like there will always be that strain in a populist movement, whether it's left wing with Bernie Sanders or whether it's right wing. So I think that as populism has become more and more popular and more people have come under the Trump tent, the MAGA tent, there's going that sort of faction of it will grow and get bigger and bigger. But it's only one faction. I mean, if that was, like some people think that is populism. I think the commentary folks are they believe that is like that is what populism is. It is always anti-Semitic, and therefore it should be rejected entirely. I do not believe that. I think that populism can be a force for good, and I think one of the reasons why it hasn't been in many cases is because we have not gatekept and we have not been sensitive to the fact that there will always be an extremist faction within a populist movement that we have to push out and not allow to hijack and take over the whole thing. Yeah. So and I don't know. I mean, I think also just X and the internet, TikTok.
Hmm.
I think like allowing these ideas in to penetrate the right wing uh, the right wing theater. I think that also explains a lot of the rise in anti-Semitism. Um, yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, it's so interesting to hear people basically on their shows talk about Israel probably 98% of the time, and then also claim that you can't talk about Israel. It's like a very weird thing. Like, dude, you're making all of your money talking about Israel. You might be the ultimate Zionist because you are the ultimate critiquer of the Israeli government, which you're allowed to do because it's a democracy. But
Mhm,
then again, you're like, I'm not allowed to talk about it. You can't talk about it. It's like so. All this shit is so weird to me that like
mhm.
human beings in the real world like can just lie
I
so
know,
easily about. It's like so weird to me.
totally. And conservatives eat that up because we have assumed this like victimhood mentality where we are the ones that have been silenced and censored, in throughout the whole Biden administration. So now if somebody tells you this is something that you can't talk about, then you're just gonna talk about it, then you're just gonna be like, "Oh, well, because people can't talk about it, this is, like, a good thing we should talk about," and you're gonna make it seem like it's like you have the secret knowledge and you are stepping out of the establishment bounds to actually put forth the real facts and the real truth, right? Like, we love that stuff. But it's once again, it's just playing into these instincts that are these tribalistic instincts that that should be contained and not exploited. So, yeah,
Mm.
no, I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, it's so unbelievable that people are like, "You can't talk about Israel." Like, that's all we see on X. That's all, like, you see on TikTok. That's the only country in that region that the media talks about. They have a microscope on Israel. And the argument and if you say that to people, like if you say to Tucker Carlson, like, Tucker Carlson will be like, everybody's so obsessed with Israel. I'm not obsessed with Israel. But if you say, actually, Tucker, if you look at all of your episodes, even just since 2025, like well over 60% of them have been about Israel or had a section where you talked about Israel in it. And if you say that to him, he'll pivot and he'll say something like, well, yeah, of course, because that's where my taxpayer dollars are going. So of course I'm going to be talking about Israel because we give them $3.8 billion a year. Well, if that's the case, then how would you explain the fact that virtually like every country in like Western Europe, right, is also obsessed with Israel? It's not just an America thing, right? Like this is the country that the BBC spends their most time talking about. And yet other countries are not giving, you know, billions of dollars to not that we actually give them, it's their military credits, but that argument doesn't hold up because it doesn't have to do with American money because the world is obsessed with Israel. And the
Mhm.
world always has been because it's Jews. The world has always been obsessed with what is happening in Jewish communities and creating these conspiracies out of it. And they've just transferred since 1948 that collective obsession with Jews onto Israel because it's the only Jewish state in the world. So it has nothing to do with the fact that we are caught up, financially in the geopolitical space with Israel. It has nothing to do with that because other countries that don't give any aid to Israel are still obsessed with Israel.
Yeah, it's very strange. And like another thing that's come from that is like just because certain ideas nowadays are popular does not mean they're right. And I think that's hard for people to discern.
Mm.
Because like if I go to a YouTube show, say Candace Owens, and that video has 1.2 million views, I'm going to assume that's right because
Right.
it has so many views.
Hmm.
Well, everyone's watching it. Of course it's going to be right. So I as a regular viewer of now whatever media is, like podcasts are the media, of course, And so I see that this show has the largest number of viewers, Tucker, Candace, all these types of things, then I'm going to assume that's the right idea because it has the most number of views. And for a normal person, obviously, that makes total sense. I get that. But it's not necessarily
Well,
true.
yeah,
Go ahead.
conservatives should not fall into that trap. We should not fall into that trap because we are like, the MAGA conservatives are supposed to be the anti-establishment conservatives. We're supposed to be able to recognize like manufactured consensus, right? And actually think of outside of the box and think outside the mainstream. So why would we be like, oh, Candace is so popular, so she must be saying something right? Like that doesn't even jive with the way that we've been approaching these things, for years. And actually, I had this talk with Mikhail Olson, who you should have on your show. You would love him. You guys would vibe so much. And he was, and yeah, we were making this point, and he was saying, yeah, like when everybody walked out of that Netanyahu speech at the UN, I had friends of mine who were right wing being like, see, well, the whole world is against Netanyahu since it might be right. And it's like, wait a second, they also walked out of like Trump's addresses at the UN too, and you're a Trump supporter. So how does that follow, right? Like the world was also against Trump, right? And we tried to impeach him and all this kind of stuff. And the world was like laughing at him and everything. And you weren't like, oh, well, they must have a point. No, you stuck to your principles. You realized that the world was full of crap. So why would you not think that the same thing is happening to Israel or to Netanyahu?
Yeah. Yeah, it's easy to just blame the Jews, It's just an
No Jews, no news. Yeah.
easy scapegoat, reduce responsibility for my own life. Yeah, it's just it's very interesting.
Yeah, no,
Anyways,
you bring up a good point. It's really ridiculous that we rely on anything, like even just relying on the amount of views on a YouTube video. It's so ridiculous. It's not real life. It's not the real world. Look at this person and what they are saying. Does that actually resonate with you? Does it actually, like, if it does, then great, then follow them. That is your right. If it doesn't matter how many views they have. Like use your own like common sense, use your own research skills and like see if what they are saying is actually true or not.
yeah, that would be amazing. But then we have, then this whole, basically all of this sort of can't say this, can say this is off limits, has led to someone like Nick Fuentes being extremely popular because he's like saying the thing that you shouldn't say. Like, I love Joseph Stalin. Did the Holocaust actually happen? Dating is gay. Like, just like absurd stuff that, again, no one has addressed him on in all these interviews, which is insane that that's the case. As someone who does podcasting, it's like pretty easy to notice when someone says something outrageous and you just go, hey, can you just tell me more about that?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty simple. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's like not much else has to go into, and then he won't have any ideas. He won't know like what else to say about it. And then that's where we've gone, that people think that he should now run for president in 2028, which is also absurd
I
because the
know.
dude is like a fucking, I don't know what he does. I don't know where he lives or what he
He's an
does with his situation,
ethno-nationalist.
but
Yeah. I think also with, I don't know how simple it is because I've never hosted my own show. I mean, I have produced shows, but like, for example, like if you look at the Steven Crowder interview that just happened, right? He
mm,
did, he did show Nick Fuentes to Nick Fuentes, right? He did put clips in front of Fuentes and was like, yo, how do you respond to this? How do you respond to the fact that you said that if you were in power, you would use the death penalty against all minorities, anyone who didn't believe what you believed, right? Like, um, but the problem is that Nick will respond and he'll be like, yeah, but like the context was different because this and this, or yeah, that was at a moment of time like 5 years ago. I don't really believe that anymore, right? And then that satisfies the podcast host, that will satisfy Steven Crowder, and he'll move on, right? In
mm,
reality, what you should do is you should have other clips, recent clips of him saying the same thing, because everything that Nick says, he hasn't said once. He didn't just say Team Hitler. He praised Hitler on dozens of occasions, right? He didn't one time be like, yeah, like women like being punched in the face. No, on multiple occasions, he has talked about, using violence against women. So what you should be armed with when you go into an interview with Nick Fuentes is you should be armed with multiple clips, recent and back then, so that if he responds and he says like, oh yeah, I don't believe that anymore, you can be like, well, actually just last week on your show, You said pretty much the same thing. Here's that. Right? You should be prepared to respond to his responses, because that's what you have to do with these types of people who like you just need to do your research, and you need to understand that these people moderate their views when they're in front of mainstream audiences because they're trying to take power, because
Mhm.
they have a political movement that they want to reign supreme. Instead
Yeah.
of just being like, "Oh, okay, yeah, you're saying that you don't believe that anymore." Like, maybe we can be charitable like that for, like, certain other people. Like, maybe if there is somebody running for Congress and he hasn't said anything like what he was talking about 20 years ago, then maybe we can just ask him about that one thing that he believed in 20 years ago, and we can give him the benefit of the doubt when he says, "Yes, I don't believe that anymore," because there's no evidence that would point to anything other than what he's saying, that not being true. But with Nick, that's not the case. He's still saying insane things every single week. And so there is an abundance of evidence to dispel any notion that he has somehow moderated his views. He has not. Just watch him weekly. Just watch the kind of things that he posts every week on Twitter, on X. So, yeah, I mean, you have to deal with different people differently. And I think that people like Steven Crowder believe, oh, like, yeah, I'm going to be confrontational, but I'm also going to be charitable and give him the benefit of the doubt. And it's like, well, you just don't realize that with somebody like Nick, it takes a little more screening, a little
Yeah.
more vetting than that.
100%. Like, you shouldn't have the person on and just violently scream at them for an hour and a half. That's not a productive
Not at
chat
all.
whatsoever. You
No.
should be warm and kind and friendly and all those
Respectful.
things. I totally
Absolutely.
agree. Because he invited you on. I like, if I invite someone onto the show, I'm not going to just now scream at them. That's like very weird. And I invited them on just to scream at them.
Right.
But if I say
That's like
before the
Piers
interview,
Morgan style.
yeah, that dude's
That's
fucking
like
out of
Jerry
control.
Springer stuff, right?
Yeah,
Like, yeah,
yeah.
totally.
But everyone knows that when they go on that show. Like, that's
Right.
the vibe of the show. But if
Right.
I am having a sit down conversation and I'm bringing on someone who has controversial takes, and I say pre-interview and other interviews that if I had an interview with this guy, I would give him tough questions. And then you have that guy on and you don't do the tough questions, then you really just had that person on because you wanted to steal his audience. That's what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
You wanted the
Yeah.
Nick Fuentes audience and you wanted them to be part of your show. And it's whole part of this fucking grift circled thing that just doesn't make any sense to me as someone who's on the internet. But it is what it is. People can do whatever they want. They can make their living how they want to make their living. Sure. But I'm still going to comment on it. And I want to be able to put my head down on my pillow at night next to my wife saying, I feel good about the work that I'm putting into the world. Yeah, maybe less people are seeing it than Tucker Carlson or Candace's show, but I feel good about it. And when my son grows up and he looks at my shit, he's gonna be like, "Dad, I think you did some good stuff. I don't think you're very cool, Dad, but you did some good stuff." This that's like important to me, and
You're
maybe it
ethical, but
also.
you're not cool.
I'm ethical, but I'm not cool. I'll take that. That sounds good to me. And that's also in the same vein of like Tucker and Candace talk about being family people and like they talk about their children. It's like, but there's no consistency in their actions. Like one of the most important things I think about as a dad is like, how do my words and my actions line up? Do they line up?
Mhm.
Like, am I telling my son that when he's like 4, 5, 6 years old that we need to treat women respectfully? That's like super important. But in the same vein, he's seeing me yell at my wife to do the fucking dishes.
Mhm.
Those things don't line up. And what do you think he's going to do the first time he talks to a girl when he's 6 or 7? He's going to yell at him because that's
Right.
what he saw dad do, even though I spewed a bunch of niceness out of my mouth. That's the fucking problem with all of this stuff. And now I'm getting on a little bit of a fucking roll here, but a tangent. But I think that's like what really grinds my gears about the whole thing.
Mhm. Mhm. I totally sympathize. And I also think that Tucker is just such a hypocrite because he will call out people, demonize them, vilify them. But if you dish it out to him, like he is a snowflake and he cannot take it, right? Like he can literally put your face on the front of a thumbnail with like vampire fangs and like blood dripping from it, right? And call you some sort of, evil warmonger. But if you get up at Turning Point USA and you're like, you're worth like $50 million, dude, and yet you portray yourself as some like everyman wearing plaid and, hunting through the woods, like, he's going to lose it. Like, Like he just completely does exactly what he accused other people, and he's like, get out of here. He's like, get out of here. I don't want to talk to you. Like he won't engage them, right? He does the same
Mhm.
thing that he gets mad at people for doing. He shuts them down, right? And if they say, they he said there was a great video Nathan Livingstone put out where he was talking about how on Piers Morgan's show, Tucker was like, faggot, faggot, faggot. See, I just say it because you're not allowed to say it, but I'm going to say it because I don't abide by those rules. But then somebody said Jesus Christ to him at Turning Point, and he was like, don't you dare use the Lord's name in vain. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, where's the line here? Like, I'm sorry, you get to determine what other people say because of like what your ideas are about Christianity and about free speech and stuff, but other people can't decide that for themselves. It's totally hypocritical. I put out a video where I showed how Tucker was just such a hypocrite on the issue of labeling people neocons or warhawks or warmongers, because he criticized Ted Cruz for calling him an isolationist. And he's like, what does that even mean? When people call you an isolationist, it's just like when people say you're an anti-Semite. People are just using those labels to shut you down, to keep you from speaking. But it's like every other show, Tucker's like, yeah, that guy's a war hawk. That guy's a warmonger. That guy's a neocon. It's like anybody who doesn't agree with me is a neocon, right? And he throws out labels recklessly to describe people. So is he guilty of, trying to shut down people's free speech? By his logic, yes. I mean, that's just one thing. There's so many things like that where he does exactly what he criticizes people for doing.
Yeah. Absolutely. I agree. Maybe final question.
Mhm.
We'll see. I don't know. What are your thoughts, feelings? We talked a lot about Tucker and Nick Fuentes, but what are your thoughts and feelings on Candace Owens?
Um, I think a lot of people think that she's so far gone that she's not even a threat anymore. Like nobody takes her seriously. And I think that's true in the political realm. I don't think she is like a Tucker Carlson, where you have people in the elite or political class that are still valuing her input on anything. But I think we're doing a disservice if we just dismiss her because she is still having an outsized influence on the culture. And
Mm.
actually, Nathan Livingstone, who makes those Milk Bar TV videos, made a really good point when we were talking one time. He said, you know, people discover Candace not just for her political commentary, but they stumble upon her for her pop culture commentary. So maybe they might not even be interested in all of this stuff, but they like how edgy she is when she talks about like Blake Lively or Kanye West or something like that. She, comments on celebrities and stuff like that. And so they'll be pulled into her for other reasons, especially because she's so big and the algorithm favors her. And so I think that she actually ends up attracting a lot of people, female and male. And she ends up drawing them into this world of, nihilism, these nihilistic conspiracies, and then she has influence on shaping their young minds and their brains in that way. So I think she's still very, very, very problematic. I think just because she's so crazy doesn't mean that we should dismiss her as just, you know, not having not being able to wield any sort of like influence in the cultural space, because that's not true. She's very popular and it's a problem.
That's an excellent point because like I have some good buddies and we just talk about some stuff and then I'll mention like Candace Owens or whatever, she put out a video and they're like, "Oh, my wife loves Candace Owens." And I'm
Really?
like, "Really?" And that for the exact same point that you just mentioned, it's like, yeah, I just love her takes on pop culture. And I was listening to her Blake Lively series, and I'm like, oh, well, wait till you stumble upon the video where she's spewing vile things about this or that, or she's connecting weird dots that don't exist, and she's sharing half truths. And if you believe her on all the Blake Lively pop culture type stuff and that whole pop culture ideas, then you're gonna just have this through line to all this other stuff, and then all of a sudden you're going to be basically believing everything she has to say because it's your version of like this reality TV show that you might not be watching. And so you make an excellent point because I've actually seen that in real time where I'm
Yeah.
just talking about some stuff and hey, I just did a video reacting to some Candace Owens stuff, and like, my buddy's wife will be like, "Oh, I love Candace Owens. She did a great." I'm like, "Ooh, he must not have seen this stuff yet." And then maybe they have, but they just love her her whole deal and think everything she says is the truth. And then it leads to some of these, as you're saying, some of these pernicious ideas infiltrating society, and now everyone believes them, and yada, 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 yada.
Absolutely.
So
yeah,
it's very interesting. But all right, is there anything that I didn't ask you or maybe failed to mention that you want to just say here now before we jet off into the sunset?
no, this was a great conversation. I was open to anything you would throw at me, and yeah, thanks for being intellectually stimulating.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. And I can't wait for your book to be out into the world.
Me too.
So yeah, and when it is, we'll definitely have another conversation. That'd be great. And I found you on X. Is that where you want to send people if
Yeah.
they want to just talk to you or see your work or
Absolutely.
do all that stuff?
Only X. I don't really use other social media, except I have Instagram, but it's like private. I keep it just mostly like travel stuff and friends. So yeah, if you want to follow my political commentary, my cultural views, you can get me on X. It's my last name. It's my first name and last name switched. So it's my last name first at Rhea Karys. And if you also, I do also have like a weekly newsletter, which isn't really a newsletter. It's just an email I send out with like a few articles every day that I think are things that people should know that maybe aren't in the mainstream. So if you want to get those daily emails, which I know is a lot, so most people don't have an appetite for that, but if you do, you can just shoot me a DM on X with your email, and I'll add you to the list. There's about like 100 people on it that I send out emails to every day.
Brilliant.
Six
Well,
days.
thank you. Yeah. I appreciate you very much. I'm happy we know each other now. And yeah, thanks for the chat.
Thank you. Yeah, this has been fun. Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you very much for tuning into that episode. And if you enjoyed it, click right here for another full-length episode of the podcast. And please don't forget to subscribe. But most importantly, above all else, please take good care of yourselves and others. And I'll see you next time. Lots of love. Cheers.